Welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon, the podcast, where we dive deep into all things health and wellness to help you find health and healing inside and out for now and forever. Hello, and welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon. I am Megan Abbott, owner and founder of the holistic health practice Trifecta Collective, and this is my co-host and head practitioner, Shannon Callery.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast here, and super excited for today's episode, as always. Very pertinent to our clients, and we get so many questions about this. And Shannon and I both remember how challenging this was for such a long period of time as we were going through our own healing journeys and working with practitioners and doing restricted diets and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, today we're talking about, like traveling, going out, and how to do this when you're going through like a healing protocol. And before we dive in, I just Shannon, I just want to say one thing. So the episode that we're recording, this episode after the Caring for the Caretaker episode, and we've received so many just like messages and emails and things like that, just saying sorry that you guys are going through this, and sending best wishes and prayers and thoughts and all that kind of stuff. And I just want to say thank you. It's very much appreciated, and it's clients and non-clients alike. So just thank you from the bottom of my heart, my partner's heart, for all the love and support and everything like that. And we really appreciate it. So far, we're doing a little bit better after this round of chemo, which we're both really excited about. And we hope kind of this progress continues as we continue to go through this process. But yeah, just thank you so much for all the support and thoughts and everything like that from everyone who's reached out.
Oh, good. I love that. I love hearing that people are reaching out. Just the extra support helps. You think it's something little, and it's really nice to hear from people. So good. I'm glad that that's the response we got.
Yeah. Everyone's been super nice, and a couple people have shared like stories of people they've known who've had Hodgkin's lymphoma and have beaten it and lived a very full, very exciting, like their best life after, and that also means a lot. And just I know this is a very beatable cancer, and long-term success is very high, especially in a younger population. And it's still really nice just to hear success stories of people who have beaten it and had it not come back and living really just great lives for decades after their own treatment. So yeah, thank you for all of that. Just wanted to say just a little thank you before we dive in here. But yeah, today's topic. So how do you go out? How do you have a life? How do you travel when you're going through some healing protocols? And we're going to dive into all kinds of thoughts and strategies and things to think about and all kinds of stuff around this topic today.
Yeah, so maybe we start with just in general, like when we're going through some of this detox work, again, you hear us talk about opening your drainage pathways and liver support like so often at this point. We always are going to do our best to get as much of that in, and hopefully, different for every person, your body is not going to have major disruptions from the detox work. Like we certainly don't want it to be like you're bedridden, you can't do anything. Like that is not the goal here. We want you to be functioning. However, when we are detoxing, like we still don't feel the best. It's hard to make it so we feel great all the time. We feel perfect. Like that's not necessarily the case. So it can slow us down. We can certainly feel more fatigue. Maybe our digestive issues flare up a bit, bloating. Emotional issues are really, really common to pop up while detoxing, and that can be something hard to navigate. Sometimes we'll have skin issues. I know Megan and I, that was like a huge thing for us. Still to this day, like when I'm dealing with some sort of toxin or stressor, that's like the first thing that shows up is my skin starts to break out. And those things are frustrating and annoying. So we really just want to go through certain things that we can do, tips to help yourself feel more comfortable while you're traveling, going to events, going out, because we have seen this happen before, and we don't love this for clients or for ourselves because we both experience this. We don't want to get to a point where we're like completely isolated. because then we can start to see some other issues come up. So, yeah, we're just going to go through, like, in general, some tips and different things that we can do to help with that.
Yeah, and I want to talk about this kind of piece first of, and I know you and I both experienced this. So, when I started going through a lot of my own healing journeys, I mean, crazy restrictive diets. I mean, I've shared in many episodes at this point, like the real like detox reactions, like clinically detox reactions, like this real sickness that I experienced when I first started my very first protocol, which you know it wasn't good. We would never do that to someone, and we also know that people do experience that, and so I think we get this question a lot on consults of like, hey, I've got this event coming up. Hey, I've got this trip planned, in the next couple months. Like, am I going to be okay to do this, to participate, to like be involved in this? And for us and the way that we work with clients, the answer is always yes, because we will make it work. The goal is for this not to disrupt your life, but to be a way to help you feel better and actually heal. Because if you're going into this work, you probably already don't feel very good, don't have great energy, have gut issues, have hormone stuff. Like you already have all of these things going on. And so our goal and our like, overarching approach is to reduce stress inside and outside of the body, which means no like 10, 15, 20, 30 supplements, like no like crazy detoxes, no, crazy elimination diets, like we're not doing anything crazy because we know the side effects and the reactions and the limitations that can come up that at the end of the day usually increase stress versus decrease stress, which once again, the whole goal of this is to decrease stress overall. And once again, this isn't to say that you're going to feel perfect the entire time. And you shouldn't be bedridden. You should still be able to go out. Like, can you go out every night? Can you like go out until 2 a.m.? Like, there's some adult things that we need to think about and have considerations in. And, if you choose to do that, okay. And there's probably gonna be a recovery period after that we're gonna need to talk about if you want to do something like real crazy. But I think that's important to note that not everyone, I would say maybe potentially most people don't approach things the way that we do. So please do keep that in mind that not all practitioners, not all programs are going to operate in a similar fashion. So, for us, like you should still be able to go out to eat. You should still be able to go on your trip that you have planned. And if like some people are in like arguably like our toughest, one of the tougher phases of their work, and that once again that looks different for everyone. But we can do modifications within the supplements. Maybe we pause supplements. Maybe we can do different things. And for us, we want someone to be able to live, to be able to enjoy it, because we also know that is important in your healing journey too.
Yeah, definitely. And certainly the backing down on supplements, depending on what phase you're in, or even sometimes we may need to add in another thing. Like I've had a couple people that I've worked with who have been very, very sensitive to the majority of foods, but we're not doing any type of restrictive dieting. But for instance, like I had one person who was traveling to go for a wedding, and she was very nervous about like the food there and being able to enjoy herself and not worrying about like GI issues flaring up. And we had to add in a couple different supplements just to specifically help with like histamine stuff in breaking down food, and that was able to help her get through the weekend so she could actually enjoy it and have fun. Now, just as a little side note here, because you just mentioned like the energy thing and like being tired when we are exerting energy, because naturally while we're detoxing, that's the body doing an activity and it's going to make it tired already. So sometimes when we're going out to social events and whatnot, that kind of drains us even more. For this person in particular, when she came back is when she crashed. It wasn't so much that she had like GI flare ups, but she definitely did crash on the energy side of things. And we talked about how, some things that she could do, like giving herself extra space and kind of clearing out some energy to get back on the right track. But there's so many things that we can do. And this, again, like, this is why we want people to check in with us so often, is so we can help with these things. Because if you don't communicate with us that you have something like this coming up, that you want to, maybe you're not going to feel your absolute best for it, but you want to make sure you're not feeling super sluggish during that time. We can always figure something out, whether that's backing off of supplements, adding something in to help, or maybe focusing a couple weeks ahead of time on more of the nervous system part, which for most people is some of the fear that comes up. It's super common that we have fear around food, just like not feeling well. If you're a person who's been like in a chronically uncomfortable state for a long time, fear is typically something that we got to work on at some point.
Yeah, and I know for me that, I was on really strict elimination diets for, gosh, like over 2 years at least, if not longer than that. And I mean, this was a big thing. And I was one of those people where I stopped going out. And I stopped going out. I stopped eating out. I stopped all of that because I also, I was on these crazy protocols, crazy restrictive diets. And the people that I was working with weren't open and very supportive of kind of this like, we still have to live a life kind of thing. And so the fear of going out, the fear of, getting it for me, gluten is and continues to be like a really big deal. And for me at this point, like it's almost like a not even a thing because like I'll look at a menu and I'll be like, no, I'm not gonna eat here, I'm not gonna risk it. I don't even care at this point. Like I can bring my own food. Like I don't care if anyone else is judging me. Like for me it's not worth it to suffer for the next like 3 to 7 days from a gluten being glutened, and so I just don't care. And I think most people do get to that point, and I was not there when I first started. And once again, there was a lot of self-isolation out of fear of this. And I think, it's easier than ever now to be able to go out to eat at decent places and have, like be dairy free, be gluten free, if you're vegetarian, if you're soy free, like there's so many options at this point. Like it's easier than ever to do this. So keep that in mind too. And once again, like the nervous system regulation piece really, really is big. And once again, no one was talking to me about this. Trauma was never mentioned for many, many years. The nervous system regulation piece was never mentioned for many, many years. And being comfortable, and one of the ways that I walk through clients with this pretty often is doing visualization work of, all right, so let's get into like a little bit of a meditative state. Maybe we're listening to binaural beats and just like taking a few big deep breaths. And then imagine yourself in whatever the situation is. And this could be as simple as going out to eat with a friend or a significant other, or going to a family event where maybe you're not making any of the food. It doesn't have to be like a big thing. It can be very simple, just whatever is bringing up stress, whatever is bringing up this fear. And imagine yourself walking into this event, going into the restaurant, like, and the most important part of visualization work when going through this is, how do you want to feel? Do you want to feel happy and joy and energized and, just love the company that you're in, enjoy a fun night out, enjoy time with friends or family or significant other, and feel into that as you're kind of like visually going through this event? Man, does that make a really, really big difference. And doing this for, several days up to a couple weeks, depending on what this is, like, especially if it's a several day event or, it is a bigger trip, like, definitely think a couple weeks is probably a good idea, versus like, if it's one meal out, doing a few days of this should go a long way. And it also doesn't hurt to do it for a little bit longer. But really imagining that and really feeling, in which case you also have to feel, and you have to feel into your body, connect with your emotions, and how do you want to feel? And really gonna go through that and doing that exercise at least once a day. And by the way, this could be like a 5 minute exercise. This doesn't have to be like a 30, 60 minute thing. Like 5, 10 minutes is a really, really good starting point. And that can be a really great tool to use.
Yes, I love the visualization tool. I still use it whenever something fearful is coming up for me, or just like whenever I'm feeling any discomfort for an activity, something that I have to do. This is my go-to, and I, do this with some of my clients as well. It is such a helpful thing. You actually have your meditation that you recorded that kind of goes into some of this, which, some of the clients also use as well. That's a great one. But it's such a good way to just get connected with yourself. And sometimes we don't know how we want to feel until we're able to do an activity like this, or just set that time aside and actually think about, oh, wait, like, because most people don't do things like this. And if you don't know the feelings, or you're not to that point where maybe you don't have like a wide variety enough of feeling vocabulary, I guess I'll say, the feelings wheel is a really great thing to look at for this too, just to get an idea of all these different things that we can feel, and then utilize some of this meditation stuff and go into it and see what comes up for you. Sometimes when we're doing it, we're also going to experience discomfort that comes up in a different area, and then when you're kind of in that state, you can try and work through it. But again, like, setting yourself up, giving yourself time to do this, not the day before, not right before you get on the airplane. Though that can be helpful, but I would recommend doing it like at least a week or two in advance, so you kind of get the hang of it and get your body used to it.
Yeah, and here's the other important thing to understand is, we can look at food, we can look at, drinks. I think alcohol is a really good one, a good example to use with this. And okay, what if you are going out, let's say you're going out, like your friends are doing this thing at a winery or brewery or an event where there is going to be alcohol, you're used to drinking, and now there's a lot of questions of like, should you have alcohol? Should you not have alcohol? Depends on who you talk to, and I'll say by and large, no, alcohol is not the best thing for our bodies. The research is quite clear with that. And at the same time, there is an emotional value in, one or two. I wouldn't say like, let's not go real crazy and get blackout drunk kind of thing. But, having one, two, maybe three, yeah, like one or two is probably better to aim for here. But, what is the emotional value of that? And how are you going to go into this event travel situation of, are you going to Italy and having like really good pasta with a good glass of wine? Like, if you are going in and you are scared, you're like, oh my God, am I going to react? Like, yeah, you probably are. And if you go in with, you know what? If I react, I react, and I'm going to enjoy the heck out of this meal and just like embody, just like feeling good and being so excited. And you could have a food that you almost always react to, and you may not react at all because the nervous system, the emotional digestion starts in the brain, and there's so much that can come from different situations depending on what we're going into this. The intention of this really goes a long way, and no guarantees that you're not going to react. And I have seen on so many occasions people having foods that they almost always react to, going into it be like, look, if I pay for it, I pay for it, and I'm just going to go and try and enjoy the heck out of this event or travel or dinner, whatever it is, and they have no reaction at all. And so I think that's also really important as to like, how are you going into this? What kind of emotions, what kind of intention are you going into this event or travel? And if you go in and just really try to enjoy yourself, enjoy the company, enjoy the food, enjoy, all the things, the surrounding, whatever it is, the likelihood of you reacting does go down pretty drastically for many, many, many people.
Yeah, and this is so true in so many cases. And I'm even like thinking of myself. I'm not a huge drinker, but I do, there are certain drinks that I like love the taste of in, certain occasions when I'm with specific people, like the energy of it and whatnot. It's fun. And, it's just like, it's the experience. And last night we went out and celebrated. My fiance just got a transfer to Michigan, so we were super excited and we went to this place that we love. They have frozen cucumber, mint, and parsley. No, that sounds super weird. Margaritas. And it's like my
Okay.
all time favorite drink that I've ever had. And I had one last night, and there was so much joy just around the entire night. I fully expected that I was going to wake up like a little bit groggy this morning, not feeling like super great. None of that happened. I was totally fine, and it's because when I went into it, there was no fear around anything. It was just like pure joy, relaxation, really, really enjoyed the entire night. And it is crazy how much that makes a difference for scenarios like this. Even when, yes, your body does naturally become more sensitive while doing detox work because we're giving the liver so much support, and alcohol is a toxin, you will naturally be more sensitive to it. I don't think I've worked with a single person who hasn't said, like, oh my God, I had a drink and like it was like one drink and I felt like I was buzzed. It's because we're supporting your liver and getting the toxins out. So that is something to be mindful of too. But it's also really important, like, even if you're not doing detox work, to do some sort of liver support. If you are someone who consumes alcohol, like on a fairly regular basis, that's something great you can add in.
Yeah, for sure. And I also think, part of this is, and, I think a lot of people, when this starts to happen, they view it as a negative. And we know we've experienced this, and we know it can be challenging at first, and it's also a superpower of just being more connected to your body. So when do have a drink or don't have great sleep for several days, like you might be more sensitive and be in tune with those kind of even seemingly small shifts or changes versus, friends or family members who may not be as sensitive or notice those kinds of things. And I really do think this is a superpower. And I say this really, this is something that I still really have to play around with because I am very energetically connected. I'm very intuitive, and it is pretty darn easy if I'm not careful to absorb other people's energy, to take on other people's energies. And I just have to be really mindful of that. And that was really hard for me to kind of like quote unquote deal with or understand that at first. And now I do. And sometimes I still struggle like, okay, if we've got to do like these 5 events, we're going to be around a whole bunch of people for a long period of time. Like, okay, I'm going to need several hours at least one of those days where I'm just like by myself to decompress because I'm such an introvert. I'm so energetically connected that I'm just going to be really aware of of everything going on. And during a lot of like retreats that I attend, this is where a lot of this comes up. If I'm around like 10 people for 3 or 4 days straight, like I know that I need about a week afterwards where I'm not going to talk to anyone or talk to minimal amounts of people because I need that time to recover because I've been around so many people, plus doing all of the healing work that I'm doing during these retreats. Anyways, I need time to recoup. And so just being aware and keeping that in mind for me is really important. And so, and many other people do not have to do that. And it can feel like such a burden sometimes when you do start to be a little bit more connected, a little bit more sensitive, a little bit more in tune. And one of the things, a couple of things I always tell people is one, yeah, you can view this as a negative, and it will be. Or you can view
100%.
this, yeah, or you can view this as a superpower and learn how to work with it, and it really can be a superpower. The other thing is that I think is really important to understand, and I think a lot of people do get to this place in understanding When you do start to become really in tune, you do become very aware of changes in your body. Like with all the stress right now that I'm experiencing, once again, like I can tell you the day that my progesterone dropped. And I can tell you that's 100% what happened. I do not need to test for it because I know. Like I felt it. I know it happened. Uh, and I know exactly why. And I'm doing as best as I can to support my body through this time. It's not terrible, by the way, but it is noticeable, especially for me, because I am so in tune. And so, I think it's important to understand that people who are not in tune don't know. And sometimes they're so used to feeling bad that they don't really understand what it is to feel good. And so they're just not connected. So their baseline is just like not great to begin with. And so when we experience like, oh, I can feel really good, and then you have a little dip, like that dip can feel pretty significant. And so it's important to understand like it's okay. Like you'll recover, you'll be okay. And how do we support the body in that recovery time period? And also try not to compare our situation with those of other people because everyone is different. Every person's body is different. Trauma, nervous system regulation that you have experienced or not have never experienced, that does go a really long way. And so I think that's an important thing to think about because I know, especially as women, we tend to like to compare of like, well, my friend can do this and she feels fine. Okay, yes, can she? And how disconnected is she from her body and how she feels? And does she actually feel as good as she thinks she does? Or maybe not so much. So I just think that's important to also like consider.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you were talking, something else that kind of ties into that, and while you're in like a deeper healing journey, detoxing, whatever it is, and you're traveling somewhere, like Megan was saying, not everyone understands this stuff. So sometimes we have to set different boundaries for ourselves because it is very common. I know we both experience this, that people, when they like hear what you're doing or they see that you're doing something different from them, maybe avoiding a certain food, or maybe you're choosing not to drink alcohol because you know you don't feel the best right now. People comment on it. So I think it's important to have some sort of boundary set or kind of figure out like what am I going to say beforehand to keep myself protected, or what can I do to make sure I'm getting enough space and like not getting more triggered by this event. Sometimes that looks like just kind of shutting people down instantly and saying like, hey, I'm doing my thing. I don't really want to talk about it right now. Like, I'm just here to enjoy the weekend. That's completely fine. Not everyone needs to understand your decisions, or that may look like stepping away for 5 to 10 minutes and going back to your room and just like giving yourself some space to chill out, to kind of recuperate your energy. Maybe you go back and you grab a drink that you have there, if that's like a kombucha or whatever it is, or some food that you brought. Like sometimes we need to make that extra space for ourselves, and that is okay. It is going to make other people feel uncomfortable because they're not there yet. They're not that connected with themselves.
Yeah, and so this in any of like my deeper trauma healing groups or sessions that I do with clients, this comes up a lot. And that is especially if you like live with a lot of people or like traveling for multiple days, a week, couple weeks with other people who maybe aren't necessarily in your immediate circle and really understand what you're going through. We have to ground into our own energy. And it is very easy to be swayed. And I find this with family in particular of being swayed of like reverting back to old patterns of like wanting to over explain yourself of wanting to keep up with the rest of the people or not feeling really bad about yourself because of a comment someone made about what you're doing or not doing or and things like that. And one of the biggest pieces of advice I always give people, and there's a lot of ways to do this, so we're not going to go through like all the ways on actually how to do this. And there's layers of trauma to dig through with this as well. But
Yeah.
how do we ground in our own energy? How do we become more confident within ourselves? And I'll tell you, especially as someone who is pretty public on social media. I post a lot. I'm like visually on social media quite a bit, sharing different things. And, for me at this point, I have, you know what, we get negative comments. People say mean things. People, I'm not perfect. Like I do, typos come up. Like people are like, what does this mean? I'm like, it was a typo. It's fine. Like, I'm not even kidding. That happened yesterday, which is
So
why that was like fresh in
critical.
my mind. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, people are like, oh, you don't look a certain way. You don't act a certain way. You don't. And here's the thing, because I'm so rooted in my own energy, I know I'm a good person. I know my intentions are good and genuine and designed to help people. I have no interest in fighting with people online. Like, absolutely not. Like, no, thank you. And I mean, I will shut it down real quick, being like, hey, we have a difference of opinion, and I don't think we're going to meet in the middle. So let's just leave it at that. And that is fine. You're welcome to think whatever you would like to think, and I will think whatever I would like to think. And that is okay if it is not the same. And that is a hard place, especially as a former, very, very, very hardcore people pleaser. It took a lot of time to be okay with that. And for me at this point, it really is just like, I just don't care. And that took a long time to get there. And part of that is I do spend a lot of time grounding into my own energy. What am I feeling? What is present for me? What is real for me? So that I'm not very easily swayed by these other people. And that's not to say I'm perfect, not to say like a comment or an email won't get to me, because yes, it will at times. And it's for like a couple of hours usually. And then like I rant about it and I'm done. And I just get it out, ground back in my own energy. I'm good to go. But that goes a really long way. And so, if you are going to be around a lot of people, one of the things that I always do, especially once again, especially on my retreats, because that's like a big time when I'm around a lot of people, a lot of energy, like a lot of big things, is I always take a few minutes early in the day and at the end of the day to just be with myself. And sometimes that looks like I'm going to the bathroom and I'm really just sitting there and doing some deep breathing and just like, putting my hands over my heart, putting a hand on my heart, my belly, and just like breathing into my body and being with myself. And so, and no one knows. You know,
Mhm.
so like there are ways to do this and not like no one really has to know. Also, it's not a big deal if other people know, but this is really like a really valuable tool.
Yeah. Yeah, or even like going to bed early. That was a big thing for me that everyone used to give me crap for all the time. And now I know why I was doing that. It's because I needed that space before my closing out space before the night. But you do eventually get to a point where like people saying things, it won't bother you anymore, and it may actually turn into an opportunity to answer other people's questions, because sometimes people are just asking, what are you doing? What's up? Why are you taking that supplement? Oh, I'm taking it to raise my HCl levels so I make sure I digest all my food. And people are like, oh, that's so interesting. There is a difference too, and again, it does depend on where you're at and how connected to yourself you are, because you won't feel like you're being attacked or like you have to explain yourself. You'll understand that people are just, a lot of people are new to this and still learning, and they're actually just curious and asking questions. So we can go both ways sometimes. Certainly not everyone is like that. Sometimes it can come off harsh. I've been there and experienced that as well. But yeah, just taking a little bit of time for yourself and kind of planning ahead of time, like, what am I going to say if someone, not too much to the point where you're like anxiously thinking about it, but just having a plan set in place of like, this is what I'm going to say if somebody comments on this, or focusing on the feeling beforehand, the relaxation piece, like all of that will help with literally everything that we're talking about. And then the other piece to this too is if you are traveling somewhere while doing detox work, make sure you bring things with you that provide you comfort. For some people, that's like traveling with their own pillow. bringing your own pillowcase or washcloth. Like, I mean, it can be anything. Making sure if you're doing like liver supporting activities like a castor oil pack or a dry brush, sometimes people bring that with them. If you have a bathtub in the room that you're staying in, go grab some Epsom salt so you can take an Epsom salt bath. Like, there's so many things that we can bring with us on our trip just to make sure we're getting a little bit of extra comfort as well.
Yeah, and I think another piece too is if you are in a relationship and this person is coming with you, once again, like to an event, to a dinner, whatever it is, an actual like trip, or a very, very close friend where you feel totally comfortable with. And, my partner and I did this. So my partner's parents came to visit and help out the week before he started his treatment. And we had many conversations leading up to that of like, hey, what are you thinking are going to be your boundaries? What are my boundaries? What, generally speaking, like this is what we kind of want this to look like. And if you don't feel comfortable setting a boundary at one point, like what's like a key word or a phrase or a little like hand squeeze or something like that, like a little signal here of like, hey, I need some space and I need you to take over for me. And so that is also a really powerful tool if you have that kind of person in your life and they're going to be there with you of just like have a conversation about like, hey, this is coming up for me. I am feeling some fear, feeling some stress about this. Here's kind of like my general game plan. And if things get run away a little bit, can you kind of help in and support me, be a little bit of a buffer, something like that. And so that is also a pretty powerful resource if you have it.
Yeah, having that safe person with you, like whether it's a partner in a relationship or a friend, or maybe even like a parent that you're traveling with, whatever, that communication piece and just like letting someone else know both ways what one another needs, that is such a huge thing and it can take pressure off right off the bat because it feels like you have someone there who's supporting you, which naturally will relieve some of the pressure for these things. So, kind of like a little backup wingman, per se.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The other thing, especially when it comes to travel, a kind of a pitfall I often see is, people will say like, "Oh, I used to travel and I used to like be able to run off of like 4 hours of sleep and I could eat anything and I could drink every day and like be totally fine." And then, they're doing all this healing work and then they're in that same situation to be like, why am I so tired? Why can I not drink every day? Like, why can I not do 25,000 steps every single day? Like, and it wears me out. And so, once again, this goes back to like, maybe you didn't feel good and maybe you were just very disconnected from your body and didn't even know it. And so, not kind of judging or comparing kind of where you were at one point and what you could handle versus where you are now. And also like I think a big piece of this, we hear this all the time, I think, from especially when I was personal training and people in their 30s, man, this was like almost every person in their 30s who was an athlete in high school and or college would be like, I used to be able to run 10 miles every single day and da da da. We're in a different phase of our life, and we're just not at that point anymore. And it's not necessarily about getting old. It's not like the age thing necessarily. It's, our bodies need different types of support. And we also have to realize, the stress in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s versus where you are in high school, college, early, mid 20s, probably pretty darn different. And that is not to be discounted. If you were free and doing all the things in your 20s and doing all the crazy workouts and all that kind of stuff and your hormones were fine and you could eat whatever you want and not gain weight, like okay, but did you like have a house and a family to provide for and like what was going on with your parents and your siblings and like health issues and just like all of these things we really need to take into consideration that yeah, things do change as we get older, and some of it does have to do with age, and a lot of it has to do with just our life changes as we get older, and that's okay.
I'm dying laughing right now just because like I we just had this conversation, me and my fiance Rob, in his like he's a little bit younger than me, but when he got in his 30s, like 29, 30s, he really started to get back in the gym and working out. When he was like 19 and 20, he was pushing it way hard in the gym, like totally, younger, different mindset, and he was completely fine. His body was totally fine. He tried to start out that way and it didn't end well for him because I was like, do you not realize how much of a time gap there has been here? Like, your body in your life is totally different than when you were in college at this point. Like, you cannot
Yeah.
start where you left off, man. And we got a lot to unravel there, but yeah, we do see that a lot. And it's this is also a learning opportunity for people because this I have seen this happen so many times when we first start working with a client, because typically in that first phase, when we're opening up the drainage pathways, most people start to feel like a little bit better, more mental clarity, like going to the bathroom more regularly. And we just like, we get a little bit of our like pep in our step back before we go into the detox work. And sometimes we push it a little bit too hard, and real quickly we're going to see that, oh no, we're not ready to do that just yet. And it's an eye-opening experience, like kind of letting you know that you really are entering this new journey, like getting to know yourself a little bit more, and you're going to learn where can I push it, where do I need to step back, what do I need to change. Like a lot of that comes up throughout this process.
Yeah, I also think it's important to understand that, our bodies are pretty amazing and they can get through a
Yes.
lot. And once again, I'm speaking from like very personal experience very recently here of like I was definitely running off of cortisol for a few weeks there. I'm no longer running off of cortisol. No, I'm just running off of coffee. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Um, but my body got through it. And then when I had the opportunity, there was a day that I like my partner was feeling okay, and we just like took a day of rest, and then which felt amazing. And then the next day, I was still incredibly tired, and I was like, I slept really well the night before. Like I took a nap yesterday. I really didn't do anything yesterday. Like I should feel great today. And like old brain, that's old brain, and my new brain was like, I'm coming off of running off of cortisol. And so my body's just needs some time to relax, for some extra sleep, extra rest, so that it can actually properly recover and start running off of natural energy reserves and not just straight up cortisol and adrenaline for a period of time, which, by the way, yes, you will feel pretty good during that period of time because
Yeah.
that's what the body is designed to do, and you can't do that forever. And so when you do come down, there can be this like real crash kind of period. And you're like, what is going on? Like, I was totally fine. I made it through whatever, whatever this was, like this weekend, this event, this, trip. And now I'm just so tired and can't seem to catch up. And yeah, it's because your body was probably running off of cortisol and or adrenaline for a period of time, and now it's coming back to its more normal state, which it is the ideal state, by the way. And this can often enlighten us to like, hey, we need a recovery period. And what does this look like? And how does your body really need to be supported during this time? So that's also something to really consider specifically for like a larger event, maybe like a multi-day event or like a wedding, I'm thinking, or a big trip or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Any big trips, because sometimes we don't want to limit ourselves. I mean, there's a limit for everyone and what that can be, but if you know you're going to be on a vacation for 5 days with people exerting a lot of energy, doing a lot of walking, eating out different foods that you don't normally eat, maybe consuming some alcohol, that is something that you can do is like plan a little bit of space, not only while you're on the trip to recuperate, but actually like when you get back home. Maybe that isn't your busiest work week. Maybe you don't jump back into the gym like immediately and go super hard, because that is going to continue to probably spike your cortisol and keep your body in that state. Like, so if we can actually plan and make room for some downtime, not saying you have to take work off, but maybe plan for like lighter events at work, whatever you can do, that is something that's going to help your body kind of get back into its normal function.
Yeah, for sure. And, this is something that I still do to this day, anytime like going out to dinner, especially when I'm not in charge. Uh, and I do like to be in charge of some of these things because it's easier. Um, but if you're not in charge, like if you know you're going out to a restaurant or you know you're going to a resort or something like that, plan, look ahead, look at the menu, call the restaurant. I can't tell you how many restaurants I've called ahead of time and they don't know who I am. They don't know I have a reservation. And I just, ask some questions about their menu and things like that. That way, when I get there, I don't even have to bother. The waiter, the waitress, anyone in the kitchen, I don't have to like take up a bunch of time asking a bunch of questions while I'm trying to order, while I'm with a group of people. And there's just a level of comfort and confidence going into whatever the situation is, knowing that I already know like these are my options of things I can eat. Like, and I'll tell you, I like nicer food. I love
Same.
good food. Yeah. And not everyone does. And I've been put in enough situations at this point going to some chain restaurants that one, maybe have never even been to ever in my entire life, or that I would never pick to go there. And, like for me, this real safe option almost anywhere I go is a burger. Burger, no bun, and I just do a burger. Maybe most restaurants have avocado. You put some avocado on there. I love pickles. Put some pickles on there. Give me a side of like some fruit or some like just real plain steamed veggies, like and I can call it a meal. So like, having those kind of like safe options, backup options, and just going in with a little bit of preparation. And by the way, this might be like a 5-minute conversation or just like a Google search of what's going on their menu. And it doesn't have to take a lot of effort or a lot of work and can save you a lot of time, anxiety, fear, kind of going into different things of like, oh my God, am I going to be able to eat? What am I going to be able to eat? And if there is a place, and I've actually never run into this because once again, almost everywhere has a burger that I can fashion that will be okay for me. But like maybe I eat ahead of time and maybe I just have like a little appetizer or just like a little something while I'm there. I don't talk about it. I don't mention it. I just order my little, even if it's like a little side salad or whatever it is, knowing that I ate ahead of time. And once again, I'm still going, I'm still participating, still being able to enjoy the company and the actual event or situation that I'm in without feeling overly restricted or feeling like a burden on the people in my group or the staff or whatever it is.
Yeah, and a lot of what comes with this is like speaking up for yourself, communicating, speaking your needs. And maybe that does look like, in order for you to feel better, calling the restaurant ahead of time and making sure you can eat something there. Or if you're going out with a group of friends and you're talking about restaurants, somebody sends one, look at the menu, and if you really can't eat anything there, gotta try and use your voice and speak up and say like, hey, I don't have a lot of options here, like what about this place? Most people are gonna be okay with that, and it does take some of that fear away going into it, when you can ask questions beforehand and you kind of know what you're going into. And again, I do think there's a fine line with this because I have been on the other side where it's like almost obsessive in a way, and it can become very, very anxiety ridden, and that's not the side that we're talking about. And I have seen that happen a lot, especially because having like an eating disorder and going through it, it can get really crazy out of control. But in general, if you're trying to, again, focus on the feeling, I want the night to go smoothly, I don't want to be like a deer in the headlights when I'm there, you can definitely ask some questions beforehand, and it's going to make the night so much easier.
Yeah, for sure. And just like from a preparation standpoint too, for like travel, for me, and this is still like a real big thing of like, if you're going to an airport, like, man, are there usually not a lot of options. I mean, I've run into multiple situations where I'm like, I literally can't eat anything in the 30-minute window that I have. And that's just like where I am. And I'm always prepared. And so having like quick little things, for me, that's like jerky of some sort is always coming with me. I always have, I'm usually doing a bag of like, little jerky sticks that are coming with me, and I got a whole pack with me so that I don't get overly hungry. I don't get cranky. Maybe this is some fruit or, like some gluten-free granola is a pretty common one that I'll bring with me, and that like can serve also as like breakfast options as well. And yeah, just being prepared. And the other thing that I think is really important is hydration.
Oh,
Whether
yes.
you're going out drinking, whether you're traveling, being properly hydrated beforehand for several days. Now, hydration is always important. And, just doing a little prep work. For me, I really don't drink anymore. I had a glass and a half of wine in the entirety of last year on New Year's Eve. So it was like literally at the last moment that I could squeeze it in. And, I really don't do well with alcohol anymore. Like it really just impacts my sleep, which is why I choose not to drink it. I've healed a lot of my emotional connection to it. Alcohol was a one of two main coping mechanisms for the vast majority of my life. And I actually really enjoy the taste of alcohol, like on a lot of different types of alcohol. I love beer and red wine and a variety of liquors and things like that. And once again, like it doesn't feel good for me, and so I choose not to. But if I am gonna go drink or know that I might have a glass of something, you better believe that I'm gonna be real extra hydrated going into that. Same thing with airplanes. I used to like be so fearful and have so much hesitation in using public bathrooms. I'm like real over that at this point. But just preparing of like, okay, if I am flying across the country for like a 6.5 hour flight, like I don't want to be peeing every hour. And so, 3 to 5 days beforehand, I'm gonna go really hard on not only water, but water with electrolytes. And then I'm going to prepare myself going into it where, maybe I'm drinking less water that day, but I still have the water with me. I still have my own water bottle. I've still got, filtered water with me. I've got my electrolytes with me. I'm bringing those with me. And maybe I don't drink for a couple hours, drink much for the couple hours leading up to the flight, but I know like 30 to 60 minutes before I land, you better believe I'm like, we're okay, jumping back on that water train. And so just like preparing things like that, whether that's, on an airplane or if you are going to drink or, if you, have big, like wedding weekend or big event weekend, like just to help support your body really leading into it. And that looks like hydration. The other thing to really think about when we talk about food and traveling and going out and things like that is, one of the simplest things to focus on is protein. And so, like if you are going to have a weekend away and you're worried about food and reactions and having enough energy and all that kind of stuff, just keep it really simple and just try to get some protein at every meal. Just a little bit. And just focusing on that versus like, all right, I need to have like this much protein and this many veggies and this many carbs or not that many carbs or that gets really stressful. And so focusing on just that one thing of, all right, I'm going to make sure I get protein at every meal, at least some, maybe it's not my usual amount, but I'm going to get some. And I'm going to try and start to eat that protein first because I know that's going to help me regulate my blood sugar. That's going to help keep my energy up, going to help focus with cognition, like just give me more energy and strength and endurance throughout the day. And that, once again, like that goes a really, really long way. Just that little bit of emphasis and focus on that protein intake.
Yeah, these three things here, that trying to prioritize sleep, and that might look like adding in, like cortisol manager, a supplement to help with sleep, because many of us do need some extra support while we're traveling. Hydration, eating enough food, getting enough protein in, those three things are super, super helpful when just trying to keep your body on track while traveling, especially if you're doing detox work. And then just throwing one more in there, and I know we've talked about this before, but making sure you are going to the bathroom. It's super common to get constipated, a little bit backed up when we're traveling. Maybe we're not getting enough water in. So sometimes if we need like some sort of bowel stimulant, I mean, there's Smooth Moves tea by Traditional Medicinals. We love that one. Very easy. It's a tea that you drink bowel mover, Cellcore. Just sometimes we need something else to bring with us, and that's really going to make sure that we're keeping everything in balance. We're able to process some toxins out if we're being exposed to more. But really, those four things, if you're doing those, you should be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I just wrote down the constipation piece
Yeah.
in my notes right before you said that.
Yep.
You're like, oh, we got to make sure we talk about that. Yeah, so those are good options. There's another one that is a little bit more readily available with easier access, and it's called Motility Activator. That's another good one. It's not quite as strong as the bowel mover. Bowel mover is just like anytime I travel, a bottle is coming with me as a
Yeah.
just in case. So yeah, but if with the motility activator, just like a little note, if you have some histamine and or mast cell issues, that may not be the best product for you. Just a heads up, it is a very good product, and for certain types of people, that may not be the best product. But even like if you're in a pinch, like magnesium citrate, it's just a stool softener. It's not like any of the ones that we've mentioned help to actually stimulate the colon and to help actually like move things along versus just softening the stool. But that magnesium citrate is something you can get
Anywhere.
just about anywhere in most grocery stores or drugstores and things like that. So that's definitely an option. I also think the sleep thing is a really big one. And, for me, I have less issues with this now, just because of my travel from last year. And, the number of different beds that I slept in, was pretty high. So I got a little bit more used to sleeping in different beds. But yeah, sleep supplements. I mean, man, my sleep used to be terrible whenever I would travel. And so having something on one or multiple things on hand for that, Hello Ned, the sleep blend, that is something that's still always, always, always comes with me whenever I travel. If you're very prone to anxiety, for some people, like an L-theanine and GABA, can be really good, can help with sleep and just like help bring you down a little bit. Magnesium glycinate, once again, super easily accessible. That's another really, really good one. Shannon mentioned cortisol manager, another really good one. If there is a lot of like heightened anxiety and emotions, there's a product called Emotional Wellness, that can be very supportive as well. I'm in this boat right now, so depending on where you are in the legality and access to this, but like some weed gummies, some cannabis gummies, or a tincture also can be very supportive for some people. I went like willy-nilly just try that, randomly while you're traveling. It
Yeah.
took me a little bit to figure out which brand and the balance and THC, CBC, CBD, CBN, all that, all the endocannabinoids, what the best balance is for me. But that is also very, very supportive. So once again, like those are all just like some extra tools for you to potentially use as you need them.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely plenty of things that we can add in and adjust and try when travel is involved while detoxing. I feel like we hit all the big points. Was there anything else coming up for you?
I'll say the other thing kind of when I'm traveling, and this does depend a little bit too, of like I do try and bring as many of my own products
Oh,
as
yes.
possible. And I do my best not to use anything in like a hotel or Airbnb from like a shampoo, conditioner, soap, face wash, makeup remover, lotions, things like that. And so I have what I did many years ago is I just got like a bunch of like 2 or 3 ounce empty bottles, and I just put my own stuff in there, and I have them labeled, and I have like a little Ziploc bag that I just keep all that stuff in, and it just comes with me whenever I'm traveling or away. That makes it really easy. So if that is an option for you, and you are like going on a plane ride or like a longer trip, and you might be staying somewhere, like those are some things to just kind of another good tool to have, and just try and bring some of your own products that are maybe a little bit cleaner that you may not react to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a big one.
And even, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because especially like even if you're a person who you may not know that you're like sensitive to all this stuff yet, and we are in the middle of doing detox work, and you're already dealing with histamine issues, mast cells, skin issues, whatever it may be, we definitely want to avoid adding in like new skin products during that time, even while traveling, just because your body is naturally under more stress because you may have a bad reaction to it. So yeah, bringing your own stuff when you have the opportunity to, that's a great call out.
Yeah. The other thing, and this has come up just a couple times last year that now that I'm thinking about this, is, if you are staying in a hotel or an Airbnb or even someone else's house, like understand that not everyone is always super aware of different things, mold being a real big one here. And like I have a very strong feeling that I was exposed to mold in one of the Airbnbs that I was staying in. And I'm in a good enough place where I had some little bit of histamine stuff, but it wasn't crazy. But I was like, oh, there is probably mold upstairs specifically because that's the place that I would start to like be like, oh, I'm sneezing or I'm a little stuffy or something like that. So just keep in mind that if you are in a place where you are highly reactive and or highly sensitive, there is no real way of knowing or being aware of this, and most people do not know. I just saw a post today of someone that I really like and follow in the mold space. Of he's staying in an Airbnb, and it's a new place. It looks super nice. It is actually quite nice as an Airbnb, and all along the baseboards of two of the rooms, there's bubbling, meaning that there has been water damage and or leaking, and there's likely mold buildup all along the baseboards there. And once again, like while he may not react because he's in a good enough spot, someone who is actively reacting may react to that. And so, if you are dealing with mold, mast cell issues, histamine issues, one of the things we may want to talk about is adding in or having some extra support on hand just in case you end up in a situation that you don't have a lot of control over and you may react. So just like another thing to kind of think about if that is you, and you are dealing with some of those issues, just to have some extra tools on hand. That's where we may like, all right, let's make sure we have a mast cell stabilizer on hand. Let's make sure we have like a DAO supplement or something, to have with food. Just like, can we lower our histamine levels? Can we stabilize our mast cells even just a little bit more? And have those things on hand as a just in case. Hopefully it doesn't happen. And I've seen it enough times that,
So
yeah, it might happen.
yeah, it's always good to have something like that on hand, like just to, and realistically, it may be something that you want to try beforehand to make sure that it actually works for you, just so you're not leaving yourself like even more vulnerable if you are exposed to something.
Yeah, yeah. And then the last little point I have is enjoy. Like have fun, enjoy, be excited, have fun, like go into it and just like try and embrace, the emotional connection, if you're traveling somewhere cool, if you're going to a cool event, like just try to embrace it and enjoy it as much as possible because once again, I do think that goes such a long way of like, I just want to enjoy myself. I just want to have fun. I just like, if there's people you don't get to see very often, like just having fun and being able to enjoy that company of just like try not to stress too much and then just like there's a lot of preparation we can do and at the end of the day just try and have fun.
Yes, that's great ending note for this. I mean, that is truly the biggest thing. And looping back to where we started, that all ties into focusing on the feeling and what you truthfully want to feel during that trip. And this is a huge part of this. Like if we just set ourselves up for paying attention to how do we want to enjoy the trip, like you will most likely actually enjoy it and end up in a decent place.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that sounds good. So those are a lot of really good tools and resources. I will just kind of like throw one other thing in here. We do have, if you're not familiar and you are gluten free or would like to be, we have a free going gluten free guide. Whew, try and say that 5 times fast. So we do have that, and it's free. If you go to our free resources page, it is under I think gut health, the gut health section of that. We'll put a link in the show notes to that page so you can get access to that. One, there's like amazing and so many different
Yes.
things on that page, and that is a really good resource. And I created that after being gluten free for several years, and it was like everything I wish I knew when I first went gluten free. And it talks about going out and it talks about like cross contamination and different things like that. So that may be another resource. So we'll put that in the show notes in case you want access to that. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining. Please like, subscribe, follow if it resonates. 5-star reviews really, really, really mean the world to us. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone. See you next time.